So not only is it conference season,
Uh-huh.
it's also awards season.
True, true.
Everybody and their brother is all of the different AIAs across the country are having
Yeah.
their own seasons,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and
Go on.
I don't know, it's just kind of interesting how it either shows the state of the profession or masks the state of the profession. I, I'm not sure yet.
Oh, okay. So go on. What do you mean?
Well,
I can read into that for sure, but I want to hear what your your thoughts are.
I'm wondering. I mean, like, everybody's very high on. Ooh, my gosh, we're winning all of these great awards, and it's just fantastic. All of these different projects that are going on in the world of architecture,
Mm-hmm.
and those are great. However, I mean, is that really the state of the profession at this point in time, entering into Q4 of 2020? I mean, because right now, from everything that we hear from everybody, is that there's layoffs and slowdowns and everything else. And don't get me wrong, I love the fact that these are moments of joy in our
Yeah.
profession,
Why are you trying to take that away, man?
and I don't
Uh,
want to take it away. I
uh-huh.
mean, they are moments of joy in our profession, and I'm glad of it.
Yeah.
And I hope that we use these as catalysts to kind of hold steady
Yeah.
and bounce back.
It
Just,
is kind of a double-edged sword, right? Because I agree totally with what you're saying. There's a certain aspect to awards where it's just kind of self-congratulatory inside the echo chamber of other architects. It's not a really big audience, right? It's a pretty narrow audience focused on what we already do. So while on one hand it is some exposure and recognition from other professionals in the field, which is a huge positive, it is also very limited to that. And
right.
it is also, I think, like what you're saying, it kind of turning a blind eye to what's actually going on in the world, because it's still resembles how things like status quo. This is normal. This is how we do things. It's not necessarily recognizing the state that we're in. So yeah, I feel kind of two-sided about it as well.
So with that, because that's a good way to put it, should we be responsible for, basically kind of taking a somber note and showing, well, this is just the state of things are, or should we use these as like, yes, we understand the state of the way things are, but we're trying to keep a positive note. I mean, there are so many people down in this profession right now. There's so many people who are depressed at the future. And for a short little moment in time, there's a glimmer of hope that, at least what people are doing in this profession are being recognized, at least by the body of the profession, as something good in an otherwise very, very trying time.
Yeah, I kind of do like that part about it, which is we're talking about architecture. Like this is a great way to talk about architecture and how it is
Right.
making a difference. Hopefully, that's what things are getting recognized for these projects.
Yeah.
And that is something that should be celebrated. And I think that again, like this is one of the ways in which the exposure of the project getting outside of its normal environment is a good thing. So yeah, I kind of think that it is a positive, and I think it is a way for people to come together around our chosen profession to celebrate the good that's happening in it. As long as that process is kind of vetted and good, then yeah,
Yeah.
I think that it is a good thing. I wish that these awards bodies would, or I guess professional bodies who are giving the awards would do more. And all I can say is really my experience because I've attended a few of these virtual award ceremonies, right?
Right.
We kind of briefly attended one the other night, and it's like a slideshow with music, and it's like, okay, this is the next part of the agenda. We will cover it in 5 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next part of the agenda. And there's not really like a discourse about architecture. There's not really a
Right.
real
Right.
celebration about architecture. It's kind of like, and now we will announce the awards and good night. And I think like there's so much more opportunity than that to really engage with people or really try to engage with people. At least put it out there and try to engage so that you can create more dialogue and conversation around architecture and less be about like presenting the winners.
Right.
That's all.
Right. I think that those are right now, unfortunately, the missed opportunities that I feel like, as you said, and even, as you said in the last episode about the discourse that is happening in the convention series of things that are going on, that we're talking about how architecture has a role in the greater good of the communities and things like that. And I think that the opportunity to showcase projects like that during the awards ceremonies should be probably, forefront. It's like, how is architecture bridging a gap in the community that is sorely needed?
Mm-hmm.
And let's talk about that. Let's talk about how we can engage locally, talk about how we're impacting locally.
Yeah.
How our, just like you talked about with some of the lectures that you had attended, I mean, they were talking about everything, and these are, global architects talking about how they are engaging in their particular firm in a local fashion. And right now, I mean, we do need to somewhat step back from our kind of global face, global foot forward. We need to step back and say, okay, how are we taking care of our local community? I mean, we live in, let's just say, Baltimore, Maryland. How is Air St. Gross, taking care of Baltimore, Maryland, and showcasing things like that? Because the great thing about, between the recording that we did last week and in this one, we had our one firm meeting, which is basically pulls together our Baltimore office, our DC office, and our Arizona office, and we talk about the state of what's going on in our profession, as well as the state of what's going on in our firm. But one of the things that they did do is talked about the trying times. They laid it out, and whether it was depressing to some or encouraging to others, they laid out what is going on, but they followed it up, and this is what I love about the leadership, is they followed it up with what are the positive things that we as the firm are doing to make a difference in these trying times. Mm-hmm. I think what's really awesome about the opportunities, but unfortunately something that was missed in these design awards, are let's rethink them. I mean, we are going to be virtual. There's going to actually be talk about you and I attending the AIA San Diego's design awards, and there was some absolutely beautiful work that was going on there. One of the things that I would have loved to have learned about, especially being somebody from the East Coast, and felt almost like a intruder into the ceremony, was I would have loved to have learned how these local projects are really impacting the area. I mean, we would have loved to have learned about community-based projects. I would have loved to have learned about what are people doing for the homeless shelters or community-based health centers and all these other things that we were talking about last time. I mean, what are the opportunities that other firms are taking advantage of in these trying times to better and enrich their community?
Yeah. So beyond the surface of the image.
Exactly.
Sure. Yeah.
Exactly. Because, I mean, there were beautiful images, beautiful projects.
Very attractive.
Yes. But I want to know what they mean. What were they?
Yeah.
I mean, we recently won a couple of different design awards. And one of them was, an environmental center where we won the grand prize or however it's really called.
Good job.
At the AIA Baltimore. And it was knowing what the mission of this environmental center is, both on education and research. Mm-hmm. I mean, those are the things that I like to learn about, of like, okay, it is a pretty building, but is a pretty building why?
Yeah. Right.
It is not just, ooh, you look really nice. It's, let's talk about your substance. What's your major?
Yeah. Yeah, it can't be all style, no substance, for sure.
Exactly.
To take a line from the Great British Baking Show, which is kind of saving us right now in mental health.
Exactly.
Yeah. I going, yeah, that and The Mandalorian. Thank you, Disney, for putting something out, at least that entertains us. The Great British Baking Show and The Mandalorian are, because it came out yesterday on The Mandalorian, and one episode per week, which I think is the right thing to do right now. It kind of gets people through. No, it doesn't. It's the right choice. Come on. If they let everybody binge, it would just be over, and then we would be on to the next like doom scroll. So thank you for drawing this out.
That's true.
I wanted to talk a little bit about the conference that I did attend and speak at the other day with the Advancing Computational Building Design, which is a mouthful, but it was a fantastic conference, and it was all virtual. It was supposed to be in Denver, and it was supposed to be months and months ago, and it got pushed out a couple times and eventually went totally virtual. But I just wanted to congratulate I guess it's the Hanson Wade team who put on the conference, because it was really well done. And this is, I think, the first virtual conference that I've attended this year. I'm still kind of due because we talked about last time, it is conference season.
Hmm.
There are some more coming up here in November that I'll be attending, and kind of weighing against this one as kind of the litmus test. But a couple things that they did that I think were really well done, and I want to say it here because if other people are running events virtually, you could probably take some of these ideas for your playbook, because I thought they were pretty well done, which was that, obviously there was the presentations, and all of the speakers did a really good job of staying on time, which was fantastic. I will say that, people who are doing these presentations are not getting interrupted. They're presenting from their hardware, so they know it really well. So there's probably some benefits there to staying on time, right? Obviously, there's internet connection issues, and they had to swap one speaker for another because of Hurricane Zeta that went through, and somebody lost power, and they were able to get back on later, which is fantastic, and they didn't miss out and miss the opportunity to give their presentation. But I'll say that the two real successful standout pieces of this were, number one, breakfast and coffee networking conversational. Just everybody jump in early in the morning. It started very early here on the West Coast, so it was normal hours over there where you are on the East Coast.
Yeah.
And that was the best time to just get to know people and just talk shop. And in like a group setting that was not people you're used to seeing. It was all new people. In fact, for me, it was some people that I was aware of or knew of but had never talked to, and others it was people I was meeting for the first time. And I thought that was a great thing. The first day, I was kind of forced into that because I was speaking early, and we had to check in anyway early and kind of be in the green room behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so good that I did it the second day. I was like, yeah, I'm going to participate in that. So the other really cool thing that I thought they did was between the sessions, they had just this speed networking sessions, kind of like speed dating sessions. And so whatever platform they were using enabled this to happen, I think. And it was basically like timed interactions and kind of random pairings of people to meet and greet and talk shop, and then you move on. And if you were really hitting it off with somebody and it cut you off, like you could still connect with them later through another kind of avenue on the website. So it was really cool. I think that they did a really good job, and it kind of enabled people to do the networking that naturally occurs at conferences that would be really hard to do because you can't bump into somebody in a hallway now, right? So I would just encourage, if others are participating in events, or kind of look for ways people are kind of trying to design interactions to happen. But also, if you're running events, really think about how you can engage people, because those are, I think, all key elements to having a successful, memorable event that's not just one-way presentation driven, presenter to audience.
Well, that sounds cool.
It was really cool.
I mean, I know that you had texted me a couple of times while you were actually at the event talking about some of people at my firm actually presenting and attending and things like that.
Right.
How was the how were the speakers? I mean, like the information itself, obviously you said it's a mouthful, but I mean, it is definitely the route that a lot of, design firms are going.
Right.
It's just, what is the elevator speech on this particular conference? Because I'm just curious about, like, maybe not everybody knows what, computational design or this particular conference was about.
Yeah, so this is a multidisciplinary conference. It's not just architects. So I always kind of couched my talk that I gave, which was really around kind of gaining buy-in from either leadership or your office community for use of tools, scripting, things like that, to kind of enable design to either do more, analyze it, back your ideas up with data, et cetera, right? So that's basically what I do, right? My job is to enable my team by communicating with the various groups of people to get kind of that buy-in. That's what I do on a day-to-day basis. So it was really me kind of sharing our experiences, but it was also engineers sharing their experiences. It was also, it's all of the consultants that we work with. It's structural, mechanical. It's all of them kind of sharing how they're doing it at their firm, all the way from, Arup and NBBJ and HOK and Perkins and Will and, the very large firms, all the way down to whoever. So you see lots of different examples. And so some of them, like my talk, were very much like, how do you convince so and so to do this and that, right? And then there was other ones where it's very much like, here's how we achieved this on this project. So it was very specific in that case, and it was great because it was the whole gamut of exposure to people who are interested in what computational design is and what the tools can enable our firms to do to accomplish, from how do you think about it culturally, which was kind of my angle, right?
Hmm.
All the way down to nuts and bolts. How do you do that? How do you make this thing work? So I think that there was lots of different, depending on where you're at, you might be more interested in some of those topics than others, but I think there was something for everyone. So I don't know if that answers your question. There's
Well, I
probably
mean,
other ways I could tackle that.
well, you were getting, you got there. I mean, I would have probably had already like gotten off my stop on the elevator before you got to it, but sure, whatever. No, I mean, because the thing about it is that we hear more and more, buzzwords of computational design and things like that. But to the architects, and these are kind of like mid-level career, or kind of, let's just call them senior level career people who don't really know that you're actually trying to convince them that computational design is right for the firm, for not only the progress of the firm, productivity, it helps out with the profitability, and all of these things. How are you pitching to them that computational design is something that the firm should be investing in?
There's definitely that part of it, and I'm not trying to say that. I want to just couch that statement and say it's not for everyone. There are many compelling reasons in which it should be, like, you don't want to be last to this party either, right?
Right.
And many clients are demanding it. In fact, depending on how sophisticated they are, they could demand it, and so you could be totally left out of that conversation, or being able to even be eligible for a project if you don't know what you're doing in this case, which we see all the time. We see that for various reasons. This is just another reason for that now. But also, I think the conversation kind of comes back to, like, where is this profession going versus where it's been? And one of my big points in my talk was, remember your audience, right? Remember how they came up through architecture. One of my very last point was something kind of silly that I haven't seen anybody else do, but I've done it, which is like, you've designed this algorithm that produces this beautiful geometry, print it out, 3D print it out, and give it to somebody to hold it, because that's the language they speak, and they will make a connection, like, oh, that's what you're talking about, and that's like, they want to see stuff like that. They're the ones who walk around your office and pick up models and look at them, turn them around and look through the windows, because that's how they were trained to do it. The other thing that I pointed out was, like, think of your scripts as trace paper. Like, they are the modern version of trace paper. Are you going to throw them away? Probably, right? When the project's over. Like, they don't have to live forever. They don't have to be applicable to every project. Think of them as the modern version of trace paper. And I think I saw a lot of people nodding their head like, oh, that's a good way to present it and talk about it, because I think a lot of times we think of this kind of investment in scripting to kind of do a proof of concept. And that's got to show value for how many X number of years now? No, like, it doesn't. Like, they're so easy to put. Do you put that kind of requirement on what people put on piece of trace? No, you don't, right? It's the same thing. So there's ways to kind of draw these analogies to how people grew up in this who are now leading our firms, so that they understand better what's actually going on.
So I'd said, you have to convince a firm owner or leadership or whatever about the benefits and the values of that, and a lot of times they want to hear it kind of in the nuts and bolts of, like, okay, how is this going to improve us X, Y, or Z? And I was kind of putting it that way. As you actually, that's actually where I was going. What you just said was exactly what I was hoping to hear, is that it's not just productivity and profitability and all of these other things of streamlining and making some of these more adventurous designs feasible and actual, printing it out and saying, yes, we can actually do this. I mean, a lot of times people limit themselves on what they've always known is the limitations of materials. And so being able to, like, show them, quantify, and prove to them that, this material can do a lot more, or, maybe this material added with that material can actually do something better, that you get, some amazing, I think about that, blanking on the actual project name, but it was by Lake Flato, and it was a park shelter and it's made out of
Oh yeah,
concrete.
yeah, the thin shell concrete. Yeah,
Yeah, the
I
thin
know.
shell
It's
concrete, and
kind of a yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's kind of a like a flower looking.
yeah, and how many people would have been able to think about? I mean, they may have been able to sketch something like that, but then, as you said, it would have probably just been crumbled up and tossed away, or pinned up on your board. It's like, oh, I really would have loved to have done this project. But then to be able to like go through the effort of quantifying that you actually can do that project made that project happen.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, even from like a structural analysis standpoint, the
Right, right,
thinness of the shell, where does the rebar need to go? How are we going to do those gaps in between the petals so that they don't even touch
right.
structurally? There's so many kind of analytical kind of angle you could take on that. But then also, like you're probably not going to make that again. And I wonder how many variations of that script they went through to come up with that final design that are never going to see the light of day again. And so to me, it is very much analogous to the process that we grew up with, which was like, how many rolls of trace are you going to go through on this project? Now it's the digital version of that, except it's with scripting, or it could be with
Hmm.
custom coding. It can be with lots and lots of digital study models, right? And they're not,
Right, right.
don't treat them as precious, and really kind of getting leadership to understand that it doesn't need to be considered precious. Now there are going to be some tools that you develop that are going to have tons of room for growth. They're going to have legs
There you
under them,
go.
and you're
Yes.
going to be able to apply something to every project because it was a repeatable thing that you automated. But in many cases,
Mhm.
you're not, and that's okay. You're going to have lots of different kinds of examples like that.
As you can tell, from me stumbling around, that I don't know nearly. I mean, I know the buzzwords. I've heard, things here and there throughout the argument, but I don't know squat about this. And that's why I'm just trying to like pull more and more out of you just so I can kind of understand, because I see the opportunities, I see the things, and I walk past, people's desks in our office, and I see what they're doing. And obviously their knowledge is beyond mine when it comes to these kind of like scripts that they're running to do all of this stuff. But it's now let's marry up my knowledge, my understanding of the way things are currently now, and your knowledge of the way things can be, and let's see where we can take it.
Hmm. Absolutely. And you are not walking by people's desks right now.
Well, no, I am not.
Well,
Sadly.
if you want to learn more about this kind of stuff, definitely listen to my other show. We talk about this
Oh,
kind of stuff all the time. That's a great place to kind of get exposure to these ideas and even the people who are behind the scenes making these amazing tools. So if you just search for TRXL Troxel in your podcast player, or if you go over to Gable Media, you can look at the shows. That's GABL Media without the E at the end of Gable. And so gablemedia.com, you'll see Archispeak there as well. And that's where you can listen to my other show, where we really do deep dives into people who make these tools or who are the kind of foundational thinkers in that space of our profession. So check it out. Oh, and I will also say, because it's been award season, and that's where we started this conversation, the last project that I worked on has been winning some awards. I'm pretty excited. It's bringing me back to architecture. It's pretty awesome.
Just found out that my first project at Air St. Gross won a design award in St. Louis, so
Awesome.
I am happy as well.
See, coast to coast, we're
Mhm.
pulling it together here, keeping this profession afloat. One project.
Like butter and toast.